Hi, my name is Toggle, and I decided to do Inktober this year. I got a new sketchbook, which is the same kind as the sketchbook that I got recently that I really loved, and it inspired me to make all kinds of art because it's my first multimedia sketchbook that I've used. I usually just use multimedia paper as like for specific finalized projects, and I do all of my sketching in a normal kind of sketchbook, but I loved having this. It just kind of kept my options open as far as what I wanted to do, and it made me feel more ready to try stuff out. So I decided to use that. My rules for myself for Inktober, it's less specifically about ink, because usually Inktober is focused on making art with ink in order to learn ink better as a form and to get more comfortable with it. For me, I'm more interested in creating finished pieces. I'm more interested in creating every day and making sure that I have basically having a finished piece is my focus right now. I have a real problem with sketching a lot and then never actually doing anything that looks done, so I don't end up having a whole lot of stuff that I could use as like a portfolio piece, or even as something that I would necessarily want to show off. It's just not done, and even if I like it and I want to show it around, nobody else can really see it because when something's all sketchy, it's not necessarily easy for other people to interpret it as well as you can. So for today, I'm just gonna go ahead and start this sketchbook. And I found some paint pens that are quite old. I think they're from my mom, and I'm not sure at what point she had them. They're Deco Color and Speedball brand. And this looks like the same color, I believe, but one is a fine line and one is extra fine. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see if they even have paint in them. I think they do. I think I went through and found everything that didn't have any paint left and got rid of them. And then I also had gone to Target recently and I found these handmade modern permanent paint markers with a chisel tip. I'm not feeling hopeful. They were very cheap. But I'll do my best. I'll see what I can come up with. I feel like the tips are probably going to fray very quickly, but let's see how they work out. Okay, so I have white, black. Doesn't even list the actual color names on here. Oh, it does. It does. White, black, bright blue, lilac, mint, melon, citron, and periwinkle. So some very kind of soft colors, which is nice because all of the ones, or most of the ones that I have from other stuff is very bold, other than this. Oh, I guess it kind of looks like, like a soft periwinkle. It doesn't have a name. No. Okay, well, let's try them out before I find out what my prompt is. I'm not using the Inktober prompts, the normal ones. I'm going to be using my own prompts that I wrote out beforehand. I have them all in this little Halloween tin, and I've got, I'm not sure how many, a whole lot in there, so we'll find out. Alright, so I finished doing those mediocre swatches off camera, and it looks like these are a bit bolder than I thought for the most part. They're also slightly more translucent than I thought, especially citron. The black actually smells a little different. I'm not sure why. And the white I went over a couple times just to test the opacity. and it drug some of the blue out here, so I think maybe it's best if I do it on something that is 100% dry, but I thought this one was dry. Anyways, so there's that. That's my test paper here. And I guess the liner that I have is gonna be red, so that's something to take into account. So let's see what my prompts are. Oh, wait, there's an important part that I forgot. I was so excited about this too. So I have way more than 31 prompts in my little prompt bucket, but I decided to determine how many prompts per day that I would be doing based on the flip of a coin, and I had been looking for my Chansey coin from Pokemon cards. There's a little foil over cardboard, I guess, Chansey coin for determining whether or not your Pokemon was confused or poisoned, I guess, or whatever. And I can't remember. There's a bunch of different uses for it, but I found something much better than that while I was looking, and that is my absolute favorite Pokemon of all time, Quagsire. It's a freaking Quagsire coin. Are you seeing this? Are you focusing on this? Come on, camera. Look at this. Look at this. Camera. Focus. And so it has my beautiful little Quagums. It's got a little water spot, but that's okay because that just looks like my Quag is, very individual. It has the height, which is 4'7", and the weight, which is apparently 165 pounds, which means it's shorter but heavier than me, and also very huggable, very sweet. And on this side it has a little 2 stars, and then on this side it just says Quagsire, and the trademark was trademarked to the year 2000, Nintendo, and it has 4 stars. So I figured if I flipped it and it was heads up, then I would do 2 prompts out of my prompt bucket, and if it was tails, then I would do 4 prompts out of my prompt bucket. So let's give that a go. Oh man, I'm not a good coin flipper. Oh no! It went it went into my sticker maker. It wants to become a small sticker, which I would actually do if it weren't for the fact that I was trying to use it. Let's try again. And it was tails, so we're going to be using 4 prompts out of the prompt bucket. Mix them up. Alright, so prompt number 1 is... Oh, we should start on a new sheet of paper. Okay, prompt number 1. I folded these up so small. Adult. Okay. Number 2. I won't be reusing any of these either. Holly. The plant. Number 3 is wheat. The plant. And number 4, lizard. Adult holly wheat lizard. Okay. What does holly look like? Okay, so this is what I've got for holly. It's very Christmassy. This is potted holly plant. Okay, so it's got these nice big pointy leaves and the little red berries, I guess. Alright. Okay, so holly wheat. Let's look up wheat. Wheat. Okay. It's kind of pretty. I didn't realize it had that kind of where it's like a little braid, but then it's got the little like stray hairs down the side, like the parts that you couldn't get into the braid. Okay, so adult holly wheat lizard. I'll do a sketch. I'm not going to sketch anything in pencil to sort of stay true to my version of Inktober. Okay. Oh, adult holly wheat lizard. What would be like a lizard's coming of adulthood, kind of coming of age ceremony? Be like, think of lizards, I think of them losing their tails. And see, I'm automatically thinking of the holly sort of as a border on top, you know? Just kind of coming around. Like this was a portrait, almost. And then maybe the wheat on the bottom. Like that, you know? Oops, out of frame. Okay. And then just sort of doing a scene in there of like a lizard without its tail. Oh my! Oh, there it goes. There's my tail. Oh. I don't know how much you can even see of what I'm drawing. I guess I'll find out in editing whether or not this even works. Okay, so I messed with the camera a little bit with the angle, and I did some sketching of what I thought might work. So I decided that I would make the lizard a striped plateau lizard, because I think that that's the name of the species that's really common where I live. And they're going to be holding an adulthood ceremony, I guess. Yeah, so we're gonna try it. We'll find out, you know. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. Alright. So, let's see here. The time has come, the walrus said, to do your damn voiceover. Alright, so I ended up having to go to work last night. I wasn't able to finish recording a proper ending to this video, or editing it, or uploading it, or really anything pretty much after the last shot that you'll see. So this is the second, and here I am. So I decided to go for a kind of anthro type of lizard, but not heavily so, just sort of standing upright and maybe behaving as more of a humanoid kind of a character. Instead of doing the border of holly and wheat, I decided to make that into kind of a ceremonial outfit, as if maybe this lizard had just come of age and was wearing a garment for it, or maybe it was some big important lizard, and I decided to distinguish this one from childhood, I guess, to try and make sure that you knew that it was an adult by including a couple of little lizards in the background there that are much younger. They're still children. Unfortunately, I mean, it's kind of unbalanced having just them there. But even more unfortunate is the fact that throughout the course of this video, you will see them grow closer and closer together as the coloring changes, and they gradually start to look a bit like they're humping. But they're not. They're children. They're just children. Okay, so I found something round. I made a little arc over the top, because something that I really wanted to practice was making really an illustrative sort of effect, where it looked like, you know, there was framing and composition happening, and it it didn't turn out necessarily as well as it could have, but, you know, I didn't have a whole lot of foreplaying into this. I didn't really do any thumbnail sketching for this. I just sort of, my first sketch of this particular idea was the one that I ended up going with. So I blocked out the back with that citron color, citron, and I colored in the holly on top. I'm noticing here that coloring in over the ballpoint pen, especially where the pen is thicker, darkened that green up quite a bit. If you notice any droning here, that's my laptop being very loud as I'm watching it right now and talking about it. And if you hear any pops and creaks, that's my chair. Okay, so I decided that I didn't really have a good brown color. The brown that I had used, or that I had shown earlier, it was really just too dried up and gunky. It would come out in like a big splotch and then just sort of dry out immediately afterwards, and then a splotch and then dry. And then the yellow was just sort of goo, so I had neither brown nor yellow for this lizard earthy setting. So I chose that melon color to make the lizard stand out from the background, and also because it still felt like a, fairly plausible lizard color. I'm pretty sure there are some very reddish, peachish kind of lizard colors. You can see the tail here that I I did a couple of versions of, and that never really goes away. That visibility, it's still here, but I tried and covered it up. I had thought initially that I would do the background lizards in red, because I thought that it was a bit of a deeper value than the melon and would push them back. I realized that it was actually a bolder color. It's very similar value. It's just much bolder and it's much warmer. And so I needed to. I'll push them back again eventually. So going in here, and I decided to make the ground that he's standing on, or that it is standing on, that mint color, that kind of soft bluish green. Yeah, just kind of filling it out. It's very nice to watch, actually. Ooh, looks so smooth. I have an issue definitely adjusting my drawing to where you can see it. Maybe next time I'll have to do a vertical format for today's video. I mean, the seconds, that doesn't matter, it's today. Unless I end up uploading this late, in which case it's not today. It's back on October 2nd. Filling out around the toesies. What was something else that I was gonna say? I know there was something. A lot of this is me just gonna be going back over the same colors and just trying to bring out that more of the opacity, because the paint is fairly translucent and some of the colors more than others. That melon was pretty good, but the mint, it's fairly see-through still. So here I am covering that back up. Fixie fixie. Wow. Okay, well, this is something that will come up at other times. And so that is just the fact that this is not a great video. And I'm aware of that, and I'm okay with that, because I think, it's important to see Inktober as not so much 31 good products, but as 31 opportunities to make a good product. And that's not just with the art in it. In this case, it's also the video itself. I want to kind of be fairly, speed and process oriented more than overall like finished quality oriented. So, the videos will get better as I go, I assume, because I'm definitely going to be trying to make them better. The art hopefully will be improving as well. And maybe it won't, I'm gonna backslide and whatever, but at least I'll have chances to experiment with different things as time goes on. It's 31 days of practice. Speaking of which, this ended up having no ink in it whatsoever, except for my very smeared signature at the end with the date. It breaks the rules. It's not a proper Inktober. I'm okay with that. I had initially been planning on doing everything, that every piece should include some ink, but to me, I'm painting with markers that's essentially ink. I'm using it in a similar way as I would to just a big fat, I guess ink and paint don't really work necessarily the same way, but in concept for me, as far as what I'm trying to achieve with less sketching and more completedness, um, it has the same kind of function. I have some test paper on the side there that I've been using throughout to kind of blot the markers, because as I would paint over certain parts multiple times, if I had already laid down a color there, it would often kind of start picking that color up on the marker, and so I'd have to just kind of drag it out of it for a little bit and maybe pump the marker a few times and just really try to get a nice clean color flow back out of it, and then relayer once that part had dried. So I'm trying to create some grass illusion almost, more of a suggestion of grass than too literal of one. It looks a bit like a kid's version of grass. And I really had been attached to that idea of kind of framing it that I had with the wheat on the bottom and the holly on the top, so I decided to try and bring the grass up and use it for that same purpose. Kind of curve around and make it, have a little bit of visual symmetry with the round top on the sky and then the round bottom where the grass parts and you can see this majestic lizard's little feeties. And ooh, adjusting camera. Okay, with it. Where am I going? Ooh, I'm doing some clouds. All right, yeah. So that took a lot of building up. The white is probably the most transparent of all of these markers. Doing some happy little clouds. Debated for a minute whether or not to do a cloud behind his head, because I felt like he already had a lot going on behind his head, and I didn't want to distract from that, and I didn't want to pull from it. And I ended up doing a cloud anyways, because it felt really weird with these two side clouds. And I'm okay with the way it looks. It might have made it a little busier, but I don't know. It feels like it just sort of brings a little bit more harmony into that, or brings it forward. You know what I just realized, though? Oh my gosh. Okay, so the wheat was supposed to curve up and behind the holly leaves, and I just completely ignored that. That would have covered up most of that cloud right there, too. Oh well. What am I up to? Oh, I had thought that I would use this color to shade it. So I'm initially using it as a shading color, but the value is too light. Fortunately, the shading in this case was on the belly, and that looks a lot like just the color of its underbelly. So I kind of kept going with that in mind, and I just added it onto the underside of the arm, and, And I think this is where I realized I need to push, I needed to push those little lizards back a little bit, especially with that purple on the front lizard. I needed them to recede. So I'm covering them up. And this is part of where all of that inking on top of each other kind of, it blurred out a little bit, where my markers were less precise, and it kind of got those shapes really close together, and especially in silhouette there, that's definitely suggestive. So re-going over those clouds, especially that one in the back, because I want it to be really standing out as a bright white and not part of the actual lizard. And coming in, I think I'm just redoing some of that grass to make it match properly with the color that I'd laid down initially for the grass in that bar in the back. That was an awkward cut. And then here, because I didn't have the yellow or the brown, I decided to try to create the wheat color using the white paint marker, because not only was it not very opaque, but it also kind of drags colors with it. It sort of blurs them together, almost like a blending marker. So I did some of the green and then that red liner, and doing some details with it. And then I decided while I was letting that dry, I was going to start lining the other things with that really ultra fine red liner. And I'm not sure how quickly I realized it, but this thing actually isn't working as well as I had thought either. So it definitely does still have the paint in it, but it's leaking, and it just sometimes would just have a blob just come out, and it would just smear or splatter on everything, and it was not not fun, not pleasant. Kept kind of messing things up. But I was like, I'm committed. This is my thinnest one. It's my, it's the best choice for a liner. There it goes, right there. And I'm wiping it up, making it worse. Trying real hard. Got some spit on my finger, tried to wipe it off. And, oh, another thing that I noticed while lining it was that the textures were different because that bottom layer, that mint green and the soft green in the background, I only did the one coat of that, really, other than the places where I was trying to cover it up. But the more coats of these things you add, the more it has an actual paint feel, and it actually raises up a little bit off the page. Not enough that you would necessarily notice it. Even dragging your finger across it might not be super obvious, but when you're doing, you're trying to line something and you're going along the edges and it's skirting that edge that's a little uneven, a little bumpy, where, there's extra paint laid down, it becomes very apparent. So the wheat had dried enough, I could drag that white across it and made a nice little tan kind of a color. Pretty happy with how that turned out, actually. I was a little surprised it worked so well. I would have liked it a little bit more golden, but the only yellowish color that I had, or color that had any yellow in it, was that bright green. And if I used too much of that, it would just merge with the holly and the grass, which were already the same color. So I really didn't need that. Going back in and putting in some of the patterns from the lizard that I had referenced to begin with. Here's a nice ink blot that I kept dipping my pen back into it just to use it up with the dry tip of the pen and to put the texture in. And then I finally was able to blot it out and it didn't spread like the last one did. So my plan worked. And finally I gave up and I was like, no, I need a black liner for this guy. He needs to stand out. I tested a little bit and I was like, this is not super fine, but it's definitely fine enough that it will work. And if I use a light hand, I can get these details in here. And for the most part it did. And it was much easier, and I actually kind of like the bold look of it. It looks a little more cartoony-ish. I don't know what the word... It looks more distinct. So I came in and I was, he was adding in the holly and the berries. And, yeah, it's just some final outlining, really, it looks like. And then I came in and I added the red for the berries. Eventually. And this clip is going to come to a very abrupt halt soon. So, I guess that's when I'll switch it over to the recording that I'm making now, which is just looking at the finished piece. That was me shuffling the sketchbook, if you heard that, over my roaring computer. Oh, I added a little bit of mint green. So, yeah, I guess I've already switched you over by now. So, here it is in all its finished glory. Maybe I could get a better shot for this, but it's too late. I don't want to get too vertical of a shot because that's not the format of YouTube. There you go. That's not so bad. So that was my Inktober day 1. Going to, as soon as I wrap this up, I'm going to put this clip in and export the file and hopefully upload it, and then I'll be drawing prompts for day 2. So stick around, I guess. Happy drawing.